You know, I have always enjoyed the stars. I don't know about you. Like camping. Some of you probably, because what I've noticed is once you get out of the deep south, Florida, I feel like I've been able to see. I saw them better in Kentucky. I've been out here a few nights, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know about you, but I'm one of those that can just like get froze. Like for some reason you go out at night, and all of a sudden you look up, and it's just one of those clear nights. I've always just been stunned and amazed by that view on a clear night with all those stars in the sky. And hang with me for a second, but I've always had this thought that, you know, I would have loved also to experience that wonder in the pre-modern world. I just, because we can't. We are products, post-enlightenment, the modern world. Like, you look up and you're like, oh, stars millions of miles away. Like you just automatically kind of look up and you know what it is. Now, you still might say, like, wow, that's amazing. But you think for the vast majority of human history, and really, you can't. Like, we're so stuck. We can attempt, but what was that like when they looked up? Well, they looked up in those stars with sheer wonder. There no preset answer for any idea what that was. And just be amazed. And throughout, for those that are ancient history nerds, all types of stories, they're always connected with the stars too. Because they're, right, you just know what it is. But imagine looking up and just being like, what is that? Like, and not having any of the modern breakthroughs that we've had over the last 300 years, and just to really look up and to just be stunned, filled with wonder. Well, back in the day, they looked up at those stars a lot. And you had a lot of ancient stargazers. Astrologers, we'll even say. And they believed that they could read images in the sky about the future, like in a large scale. And that's the biggest difference today. Today you hear like the word astrology, and it's more of like a pseudoscience, right? And it's all about the individual. It's like, let me tell you about your personality and about like who you're going to get in the best relationship. I mean, it's really looked at a certain way, where ancient astrology had nothing to do with individual person. It had to do, these stargazers back in the ancient world, they were trying to read large scale socio-political, like world impacting events. That's what they did. But now ancient stargazers, for the most part in the Bible, generally, are criticized and condemned. Daniel, Isaiah, there's this criticism, and there's always this being the church, the people of God being implored not to rely upon them, that God's people are to be different. But at the same time, right, we know there's this idea of Genesis 1:14, that there's these lights in the sky and they're set for signs and seasons. We know that Psalms 19, the heavens declare the glory of the Lord. And then we have this story of the Magi in Matthew chapter 2. Magi, not kings, not kings, Magi, which would best be understood in this context as ancient stargazers, astrologers, from a foreign nation. And the story tells us about how some stargazers from an ancient foreign nation are led to the birth of Christ. In the time of King Herod, this is Matthew chapter 2, in the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who was born King of the Jews? For we observed," don't worry about that, "for we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea. For so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him," wink, wink, "bring me word so that I may go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The story of the Magi, connected right here in the birth of the Messiah. This event here is an important event in the life of the church. And it's been celebrated for almost 1800 years. You know, this is the event that's typically celebrated as Epiphany. And it's always on January 6th. It's always 12 days after the Christmas season. It really bookends the Christmas season, the Epiphany, when the Magi, when the Christ was revealed to the nations. And it was actually celebrated in the church and formalized even before Christmas. And there are still traditions around the world that still celebrate Epiphany, January 6th, as the greater and the more celebrated day than even Christmas. Epiphany. Epiphaneia in the Greek. This appearing, and then this prefix, epi, intensifies it. This intense appearing, this intense showing forth. Clarity, something brought, a revealing. A moment when something of significance is revealed. And this day, this celebration, it's been maintained throughout church history, and it reflects always these themes of light, revelation, and the universal scope of salvation. See, who are these Magi, right? This is the little nerd out section of today. They're Magi, they're stargazers, they're astrologers. They're not kings, but they were, in the ancient time, advisors to kings. Kings always had the stargazers in their court and relied upon them. They believed that they could read these images. And what do we know about these Magi in Matthew? Well, what we don't know is we don't know their names. I know some of you might think, like on a trivia test, Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthasar. That didn't come until about 500 years later. It was added in. We don't know their names. We don't know how many. We don't. It just says Magi. It could be 2 that brought 3 gifts. It could be 16 that brought 3 types of gifts. We have no idea. And that little picture you get, I know it's pretty. We see in the nativity scene the outline of the 3 guys, and usually we put a crown on them because we say kings. They weren't. And it's their silhouette over the desert. Whereas it probably was a caravan, because when you traveled, you brought many camels and servants and everything. And so it was probably a group. I hope that doesn't burst your Christmas bubble. And guess what? We don't really know where they're from either. We don't. There are some good suggestions. Maybe you've come across one where you just think, oh, that's where it is. But typically, they're believed to be from Arabia or Babylon. or Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey, or even maybe Egypt. Babylon is usually the area because Babylon is where the exile was. Daniel was in Babylon. There were Jewish studies in Babylon, and it was the seat of astrology in the ancient world. So Babylon is a really good choice, but we don't really know. We don't really even understand fully what they saw, what happened, and how they were led. But here's what we do know, is that they were concerned with the beginning of a new ruler that would have international importance in the world, including on them. See, we know that they were concerned and interested in something, and that it had a big impact in the world, and that it would have impact on their lives. And so what did they do? They were looking. They were curious. They paid attention day after day, knowing that something was coming, being interested in what was coming, and knowing that it was a big deal, and know that it had implications on their own lives. They stood waiting, but not just waiting, looking, being attentive, paying attention. And you wonder, right? Epiphania. It happened. Waiting, being attentive, paying attention. And it happened. Something happens. A light, a star. Something happens. And what do? They act. They move. They've been waiting, they've been patiently waiting, they've been attentive, they've been paying attention, and when something happened, something actually happened, it forced them, they left, they moved, they did something new. They left their normal. They weren't going to be able to stay the same anymore after something happened. And so they journey. They journey with or towards the light. What we know is they journeyed also, and there another sermon for another day, just the discipleship parallels of the Magi in the Christian life today. But they journeyed with a sense of faith, because they journeyed with a general idea. We even know, if you're reading closely, they lose sight of whatever it is. They lose sight of whatever light, rising star, whatever it is, they lose sight of it. They are traveling in a general idea. They see something has changed, they are changed, they move, they act, but it's in a general sense. They didn't have it all figured out. And we know this because they kind of show up in Jerusalem. They have some ideas, but they don't show up in the right place. They show up in Jerusalem. And then they start asking around. Hey, did a new king get born? And you can imagine the stir that caused, right? Because there's one who rules in that area named the King of the Jews. And then some 3 foreign wise men, stargazer, important type figures show up saying, hey, where's this new king of the Jews? Herod doesn't like that. Another sermon for another day. Epiphanies can be received well, or they can be rejected, as in Herod's case. So Herod grabs everyone together. Why are these guys here? Why are they talking about the King of Jews? I'm the King of the Jews. And so the Messiahs come, and the ones that are most acutely aware are foreigners from another nation. And the people in Jerusalem are not even paying as much attention as they are. And so Herod calls them all together. I wonder, it kind of went like, suppose this Messiah figure was to be born. Where would it be? And they're like, Bethlehem is what the prophets say. And so they tell the 3 Magi, well, if there was a new king born, it would be in Bethlehem. And so they set out again. And this is where we know that they traveled in a general sense. And they traveled in faith, if we may say. Because it's not until they leave Jerusalem and where they were at in King Herod's palace that it says there in verse 10, when they left, it says, then they saw the star again. So this thing left, but when they left Jerusalem, they saw it again. And it says that they were overjoyed. And this is where there's those few points, and I don't try to, this is those few points where like, gosh, if you read the Greek, it's so much better. Because we just say, oh, they were overjoyed. But in the Greek uses 4 words back to back to back to explain how it's like saying they were so full of joy, excited, overabundant, and bursting with joy when they saw the star. Like the emphasis of, you can see these guys, they believe they've seen something has happened, their journey and where it's at, but they've kind of lost sight of what's going on. They're not sure, they're asking questions, and there it is again. And they are filled with joy, abundantly overflowing, excited, and blown away. And so then it brings them right to where they needed to go, where the destination they originally set out for. Why did they set out? That is the question of Epiphany, the celebration of Epiphany. Why did they set out? Verse 11, on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The purpose of their journey was worship. The purpose of the Epiphany was worship. The Magi set out with the destination for worship. Discipleship, our following of Christ, is the same in this story. It's all about the destination of worship. But worship meaning what? Worship in the context of sacrifice and gift. How do the Magi worship? It wasn't like sometimes what we think, like, praise God, do this for a little bit, and then we go home, and worship was good today. It wasn't that context. It was in the context of offering and sacrificing and gift, valuable things, giving. The whole journey was a journey of sacrifice, of time, energy, resources, comfort, the familiar, all because one was worthy. Our discipleship, our following Christ, has no other destination than worship, giving, gift. The story of the Magi, it calls us to reflect on our own journey towards Christ. We are invited always to follow the light, to pursue Jesus with a sense of wonder, with a sense of super abundant, overjoyed excitement, blown away. And it leads to the response of worship. Their journey shows us that worship was not some passive acknowledgement of something that happened over there, but it was an active offering of themselves. It is an active offering of ourselves. We want the Magi to make a claim on us that we remember that worship, we want the worship that moves us. We want the worship that does not cause us to sit still. The epiphany, the revealings, the being shown forth things. When God shows forth himself and his plans, it's not something to see and marvel at. Oh, that's nice. Look at that star. They acted and they journeyed. They sacrificed their time, their energy, and their resources. They arrived at the house overwhelmed because it's been revealed to them the significance of who Christ is. They were not overjoyed because they found all of their answers to all of life and knew everything and knew how everything was going to work. I doubt they understood hardly any of that. They were overwhelmed with joy because their journey had brought them to the source of the light, the source of the epiphany, Jesus Christ. And they worshiped through sacrifice and gift. Romans 12:1 reminds us always to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. We can never melt worship down to singing a few praise songs, but worship is this life offered, this gift, this sacrifice. Like the Magi, we are called to present our gifts to Jesus. Not merely material treasures, but like Romans 12 says, the gift of our lives, our attention, our obedience. And we know and we do this, and it's a sense because he's good. He's good. All the prophets declare, oh, when your righteousness comes, when your justice is embodied. Because in the Messiah, the righteousness, the justice, the goodness, it's embodied in him. And so sacrifice and obedience and worship, it's done out of a sense, man, he is worthy, he is good, he is righteous. And the Magi call upon us sometimes, right, to consider our journey. Do we pay attention? Waiting and paying attention is not the same thing. Do we know the significance and the activity of the God of the universe who is actively at work, and therefore we pay attention, looking? Or do we entertain ourselves, busy ourselves, and just wait? What's the best way we can pay attention? Prayer. I always want you to think about prayer differently because we get so ingrained with, we hear that word and we instantly go somewhere. And it's not that where we go is wrong. It's just a sliver of the pie. Prayer is paying attention. It's being attuned. It's listening. It's looking. But the journey, the Magi remind us that there's action, that there's movement involved. The life the Magi had, all of their life, and up until this moment, was never going to be the same. When God shows forth, there's activity and movement that happens. And the person that you will be will not be the person that you were. The place maybe that you were will not be the place that you will be. A showing forth from God has response. It's asking for that response. But then it also reminds us that there's something outside of us, that the light will lead us. They didn't have to do all of this on their own and figure everything out, even when there was a moment when they probably weren't sure, even when they didn't see it anymore. Like, what happened? Oh, it showed up again. And so we look, we pay attention, we pray, we act, we move with the best of intention, but there is a light. And that light promises to be with you and to guide you and to lead you. There is something external. There is God outside of us wooing us to himself. And it ends at worship, at sacrifice, at gift. Are we looking for the light of Christ in our lives? Incomplete question, because it's a useless question if we don't ask the next question. Are we willing to follow the light? Sometimes I want to be provocative. Are you looking for the light? Yes, I'm looking for the light. Who cares? And that's a little harsh. Who cares if you look for it? When it shows, will you follow it? When we encounter Christ, are we ready to bow down in sacrifice, in worship? Now, what I want to do here, I'm going to bring this service to a close, but there's an invitation here. And I want to extend an opportunity for every person here. If you feel God's light, God's call, inviting you into a deeper place of worship and surrender, I want you to hear it all as invitation from God. Wherever you're at, however you're at, whatever you're doing, there is this confident, assured call from heaven that always invites back, invites to more. And that call never quiets. It never ceases. Wherever your place is, there is a generous invitation from God to journey with him.